The marble spins again. Listen closely. This is Dead Air Theater. The alley was much narrower than it should have been. Phil staggered forward a few steps, then stopped, chest heaving, hands braced on his knees. The brick walls rose on either side of him like the jaws of a trap, damp and uneven, slick with age and something darker. A rusted fire escape clung to one wall, its ladder dangling uneasily several feet above the ground. No doors. No dumpsters. No end. Just brick, shadow, and the faint echo of his own ragged breathing. For a moment, mercifully brief, nothing chased him. The night air was cold and sharp in his lungs, grounding him, almost convincing him that this alley, this city, was real. He straightened slowly, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. His fingers came away trembling. Okay, think. Oh, think. He turned in a slow circle, searching for logic, for any familiar landmark that might anchor him. The brickwork bore old graffiti, layers upon layers of forgotten names and symbols. A puddle reflected a silver sky, rippling faintly as if disturbed by something unseen. Phil frowned. The reflection was wrong. He stepped closer to it and looked up. The sky was dark, but not dark. The sun, what should have been the sun, was gone, blotted out entirely by a colossal sphere suspended impossibly overhead. It hung low and vast, dominating the heavens. A perfect cosmic sphere turning slowly in place. Around it, the remnants of the sun's corona clung like tattered silk, light wrung thin and bleeding away, as if it were being siphoned into the sphere itself. Phil's breath caught painfully in his throat. Inside of the sphere, galaxies churned beneath its surface, spiraling and colliding in slow, stately violence. Glyphs the size of continents drifted through its depths, symbols that rearranged themselves when he tried to focus on them, spelling meanings in his mind that he couldn't quite hold. Landscapes unfolded and folded again within the sphere, vast staircases that led nowhere, looping back into themselves like Escher sketches made flesh, purple oceans that flowed upward into starless skies, cities built sideways along cliffs that had no bottom, an antlered silhouette stalking across the frozen landscape, its form a mass of writhing shapes, stag-like but vaguely serpentine. The impossible, displayed without apology. Phil sank against the wall, sliding down until he sat in the cold dampness, staring upward. This is what you are. This is what you've been hiding. The alleyway trembled faintly, as though in response. From above came a sound, a skittering and a chittering sound. Phil's gaze dropped from the sky to the rooftops. Shapes moved there, small at first, then resolving into clusters. Insectile forms clung to the edges of buildings, their silhouettes sharp against the warped glow of the sky. Too many legs, wings folded tight against chitinous bodies, heads that tilted and twitched as they watched him with compound eyes that reflected the spinning sphere overhead. Clicking sounds passed between them. Communication. Phil scrambled to his feet, heart hammering anew. The door to the restaurant opened. Warm light spilled into the alley, sickly and inviting. They came pouring out. The guests no longer bothered with restraint. Tentacles unfurled, mouths opened wide along torsos and limbs, teeth clattering wetly as they flowed forward in a mass of flesh and hunger, spreading outward from the door along the wall. Some still wore fragments of clothing, suits stretched grotesquely over warped frames, dresses torn and trailing like shed skins. The whispers were gone, and now there was just a sound of anticipation. Phil backed away until the brick wall pressed hard into his spine. There was nowhere left to go. The mass parted, and Jack stepped forward. He still wore his human shape. Mostly. The suit was immaculate, as always, but it hung oddly now, as though tailored for a body that wasn't quite holding the same proportions anymore. His movements were smooth, but fractionally delayed, like a performance slightly out of sync with itself. His smile was there. It just didn't reach his eyes anymore. Jack raised his hands placatingly.
Phil. Hey, Phil. Easy, buddy.
Phil laughed, a short, broken sound.
You knew?
Jack shook his head, genuinely regretful.
Not like this. I swear. This was messy, Phil.
He glanced back at the mass of guests with faint irritation.
They get excited.
Phil's voice shook with rage and terror.
You brought me here.
Yes, but not for this. He took a step closer, and the air around him felt heavy, bending slightly as though gravity itself deferred to his presence.
I was hoping we could have done this without the theatrics, Phil. A signature, a handshake. You go home thinking you made a deal with the devil you understood.
What are they? Jack followed his gaze upward, toward the spinning sphere, consuming the sky.
Stakeholders, beneficiaries, survivors from elsewhere.
Jack looked back at Phil, his expression almost kind.
You helped decide who gets to live, Phil. Did you really think that power wouldn't attract attention?
The guests surged closer, tentacles brushing the brick, mouths tasting the air.
You weren't supposed to see any of that, Phil. That, whatever you took, it wasn't ours.
Phil's knees buckled. So, what happens now?
Jack hesitated. I wish you hadn't a run, buddy.
That void sun in the sky pulsed once, light shuddering through its depths. The alley filled with shadows. Phil screamed. Phil did not remember falling. One moment he was screaming in the alley, the sky above him occupied by the impossible weight of that sphere, the guests closing in on him with their wet patience. And then he was standing. The alley was empty. Just finished. The brick walls were still there, damp and ancient, the fire escape still clinging uselessly to rusted bolts. The door to the restaurant stood shut. its handle cold and unmarked, as if it had not been turned in years. Phil's breath came slowly now. He looked down at his hands. They were clean. No blood, no grease, no trembling. When he looked up again, the sky was almost right. Night, yes. Stars, yes. But above them, occupying the space where the sun's authority should have lingered, even in its absence, hung that sphere. It was smaller now, or farther away, or perhaps simply no longer bothering to be close. It turned without urgency, its surface swallowing light and returning none. The sun's corona still clung to it in places, a thin, ragged halo like the afterimage of something recently removed. He saw them clearly now, not as hallucinations or visions, but as places with continuity and weight. A snowbound mountain peak, its facilities split open like a wound. He recognized the geometry instinctively, though he had never been there. A village square, empty but for the echo of bells and ritual markings, worn thin by repetition. A loom with threads that stretched into the sky. A long dining room beneath chandeliers, tables set with care. An alley. This alley. He watched himself standing where he stood, slightly out of sync, like a reflection delayed by some cosmic imperfection. Phil pressed a hand to his chest. His heartbeat, steady, unremarkable. Behind him, footsteps. He turned slowly, and Jack stood at the end of the alley. He looked better now, more aligned. The suit fit him properly again, though the fabric shimmered faintly at the seams. His face held the familiar lines of concern and professional courtesy, but something beneath it had relaxed.
I was hoping you'd still be here, Phil.
Was that? Did any of that?
That depends on what you mean by that, Phil.
You're unbelievable.
I get that a lot.
They stood in silence for a moment, the sphere turning overhead, patient as erosion. I didn't know.
I believe you. Most people don't. That's kind of the point.
Phil's gaze drifted upward again. Is it? Did my company? Jack followed his eyes. For a moment, something like genuine thought crossed his face.
Some people think it's a god. Others think it's a machine. A few insist it's just a place where things end up. Personally, I don't give a shit.
He reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew a folded document. A contract. An ordinary contract. Legal language, margins, signatures waiting patiently at the bottom.
The deal's still on, Phil. It always was. The dinner, this place. This wasn't a test. This was just a meeting.
Phil did not take the contract. And if I walk away? Does any of this stop? Jack shook his head.
Afraid not, Phil.
And if I sign?
Then all this continues much more smoothly, Phil.
Above them, the sphere rotated, glyphs shifting along its surface like thoughts rearranging themselves. Phil closed his eyes. For a moment, just one, he imagined a different story. One where he shouted, where he fought and refused. One where that mattered. When he opened his eyes, Jack was still there. The alley was still empty, and the sky was still occupied.
Funny thing, Phil said quietly. I used to think the worst part was not having enough time. Phil took the contract. He did not rush. As he signed, the sphere overhead pulsed. Somewhere, far away or very close, something continued doing what it always had done. Jack folded the contract neatly and tucked it away. Shall we? He asked, gesturing toward the restaurant door. Phil looked once more at the sky. Inside the sphere, the dining room drifted in and out of view, replaced by a mountain, then a village, then a corridor of doors stretching longer than any building should allow. None of them stopped. Phil nodded. The door opened. Behind them, the alley remained. And above it all, the marble turned. Thank you for listening to another episode of Dead Air Theater. La Viande Noire was written and produced by myself, Edward Baker. Did you like it? Let me know in the comments. I'm still trying to figure out whether or not I should do these longer stories in an episode format, or if I should just take a little bit longer and put the whole story in one episode. I mean, it's my show, I'm not really worried about time. It's just the time it takes to write, record, and produce them, I guess. We'll see. I'm still trying to figure all this stuff out. Anyway, if you liked it, please follow the show, leave a review, and a comment. That'd be cool. And if you're so inclined, there is a Discord. There should be links down in the show description in the link tree. And as always, thank you so much for listening. I'll see you when the marble spins again.